Federalism is the state organizing principle in the Federal Republic of Germany. You already have it in the name. In 1949, it was constitutionally anchored in the Basic Law, which is our constitution. The hallmark of the German federal system is the close cooperation between the federal government and the states. The latter participate in the legislation through the Federal Council, participate in EU affairs, and implement federal laws on their administrations. In recent decades, the federal system has been redesigned in several reform steps. The discussion was and is often the design of the country financial equalization between the countries or the states. By 2019, a reform of financial federalism seemed inevitable, but it wasn't that bad. Cooperative federalism is one thing. German federalism is based on cooperation between the federal and state levels. The counter model would be competitive federalism. After 1949, more and more powers were transferred to the federal government, which in turn allowed the federal states to have a larger say in the Federal Council, especially since, according to Article 84 of the Basic Law, it would have a say anyway if the federal government intervenes in the administrative structure of the federal states, and so they got the right to legislate there. However, the financial constitution is still the main problem, making poorer states de facto borders of the federal government. In addition, there was an increasing interconnectedness of competences, making it difficult to make quick decisions. There is a risk that the different horizontal levels will paralyze each other. There is also a danger that laws will be passed at the federal level and that the states and local authorities will have to pay them, especially since federal legislation has left little room for maneuver. One possible solution to the problem is the principle of connection. The sphere of influence of state policy is also hampered by extensive cooperation between the states. Above all, this is due to the preservation of legal unity and the securing of mobility within the federal territory, but in particular reduces the sphere of influence of the state parliaments. An example of the interlocking of the states with each other is also the Conference of Ministers of Education, which should ensure that as uniform criteria as possible are applied in the education system of the individual states. Part of the critics say that this creates an egalitarianism that dissolves the great advantage of educational federalism, namely the competition of states for the best system, into a lazy compromise. Others are of the opinion that the school systems have already diverged so far that the problems of relocation and recognition of diplomas are a real disadvantage for Germany, even though it is often said that it is precisely the competition of federalism, as in the cultural and economic sphere, which offers the possibility to arrive at a better solution. And then there's something called executive federalism. Characteristic of German federalism is its special form of application as so-called executive federalism. By definition, the term executive federalism refers to a political system in which there is a close interlocking of the executive at the federal level and state level, at the same time relative powerlessness of the state parliaments. In other systems with two legislative bodies, such as the United States of America, the representatives of a federal state, which are the senators there, are specially appointed by elections in the state. But they have, in contrast to the German model, neither executive nor legislative function in the state. Their task is exclusively representation at the federal level. The executive function in a member state is assumed by governors who in turn have no function at the federal level, and that's different in Germany. The peculiarity of German federalism is that the Federal Council consists of representatives of the state governments. This system is unique in the world and is difficult to compare. Similarity exists with the system of the European Union, in which the government of the member states are represented in the Council. This Council of Ministers is part of the legislative process alongside the European Parliament and the Commission. The Basic Law, our Constitution, and the Federalism are quite important. The Basic Law for the Federal Republic of Germany defines federalism as a political organizational form. Even the preamble expresses that the Federal Republic consists of several states. It says, the Germans in the countries of Baden-Württemberg, Bavaria, Berlin, Brandenburg, Bremen, Hamburg, Hesse, Mecklenburg-Pomerania, Lower Saxony, North Rhine-Westphalia, Rhineland-Palatinate, Saarland, Saxony, Saxony-Anhalt, Schleswig-Holstein, and Thuringia have completed the unity and freedom of Germany in free self-determination. In Article 20 of the Basic Law, the Federal Republic of Germany is expressly constituted as a federal state. The principle is protected by the Eternity Clause of Article 79 in the Basic Law, which declares it to be irrevocable. Also, no constitution-changing two-thirds majority of the German Bundestag and the Federal Council may cancel the federal structure and organization of the Federal Republic. The only way to dissolve the federal structure of the Federal Republic would be to adopt a new constitution under Article 146 of the Basic Law. But there have, as I said, a lot of reforms that were needed and are still needed. All parties agree that there's an urgent need for reform still. For this reason, a reform commission was chaired by Edmund Stoiber and Franz Müntefering already many years ago. The aim of the reform was a clarification of powers. The number of laws required by the Federal Council was also supposed to be reduced. The reform process, however, seemed difficult as it involved the skills of many local and ministerial authorities. Repeatedly, the work of the Reform Commission was considered too timid, and in December 2004 negotiations failed. In February 2006, as a consequence of the Grand Coalition of that time, negotiations could be, as they thought, successfully concluded and brought into Parliament as federalism reform laws. But I think it wasn't that good. The restructuring of the states and restructuring of the federal territory is another topic. For these reasons, since the beginning of the Federal Republic has been repeatedly asked to merge smaller states. In December 2003, for example, the Brandenburg Prime Minister Matthias Platzek called for the merger of Berlin, Brandenburg, and Mecklenburg-Pomerania. Again and again, the mergers of Bremen and Lower Saxony, Schleswig-Holstein, Mecklenburg-Pomerania, and Hamburg, and occasionally also of all 5 North German states, were required to have a northern state as one. Similarly, the merger of Saxony, Saxony-Anhalt, and Thuringia, and the unification of the Saarland with Rhineland-Palatinate were required. In October 2014, the then Saarland's Prime Minister Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer suggested the discussion about mergers of individual federal states. She demanded a radical reorganization of the Federal Republic if the reform of the financial equalization does not relieve the burden on the poorer states. We would then have to talk about how we set ourselves in Germany as a whole future-proof, specifically whether there will be only 6 or 8 states in the future instead of the previous 16 states. Well, such mergers, however, require a referendum pursuant to Article 29 of the Basic Law and encounter resistance, in particular due to the historically grown traditions. And so, still today, in 2022, when I'm filming this, we are still here with 16 states. So nothing has happened on that part, because all attempts so far have failed. And we still need a lot of reform of the federal system, because there are still too many competences that are shared by the Federal Council and the Bundestag. And so it takes ages to change things. But nobody ever succeeded really with that. Even the last reform had some good points, but it by far did not go far enough. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.